Welcome to Optics, featured artist in the Griffin Gallery at WinCAM. I'm Krista Dix, Executive Director of the Griffin Museum of Photography, and we are thrilled that you've joined us to hear from our featured artists and curators Meg Griffiths and Frances Jakubek. The Griffin Museum is based in Winchester, including our satellite gallery located here in WinCAM. A Yellow Rose project, curated by Griffiths and Jakubek, is currently on the walls of the Griffin Museum in Winchester and is an expansive exhibition featuring the works of 106 women photographers responding to the 19th Amendment. These talented women also collaborated to create the exhibition here at WinCAM, Perennial Impressions. Both exhibitions run through November 30th. These two women are remarkable voices in contemporary photography. Artists, curators, collaborators whose work not only reflects the world around us, but actively shapes the conversations within it. Meg Griffiths is a Texas-based photographer and educator whose work explores the complex intersections of domestic life, culture, and history, particularly across the South and Cuba. Her images have been shown around the world and are held in collections such as the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston and the Center for Creative Photography. She's also an associate professor of photography at Texas Women's University. Frances Jakubek is an independent curator, image maker, and arts consultant known for her sharp curatorial eye and commitment to elevating underrepresented voices in photography. She's held leadership roles at the Griffin Museum of Photography and Bruce Silverstein Gallery. Her curatorial work has been featured by institutions including the British Journal of Photography and ARL. We welcome you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So let's talk a little bit, because there's so much to talk about.
True.
Let's talk about how the two of you started collaborating for the Yellow Rose project.
Do you want to go?
Sure. So April 2019, we connected after APAD in New York. So the photography fair, I believe you and Elliot had your book there at the time. And I was working with Bruce, so I was, doing the whole art fair, song and dance. And we had dinner that night, and there was like maybe a lull in conversation, and Meg looked at me and she's like, next year is the centennial of the women's right to vote, the 19th Amendment ratification. Do you want to do something with like a large group of women about it? And it was kind of just this like toss up into the air, and I was like, yeah, definitely.
It's always that, right? It's like, I've got this big idea and I have no idea what's going to happen, but let's give it a shot.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So how was the response?
Well, we had, of course, like a meeting. We're like, are we actually going to do this together? And feasibly, how are we going to do it? And so we started gathering names of people, obviously, that we knew from our network, but also broader than that, people we didn't know, like our big, dream big list. And it was probably over 200 names. We found their emails and we sent out the big ask, the question of would you be willing to make images in reflection, response, or reaction to the 19th Amendment? And you can create 1 to 5 images. Anything you submit will go into this project. We're not going to cut anything out, and we're going to create and launch a website. And would you like to do this? And that was pretty scary thing to do, because I don't know, imposter syndrome and feeling like, who am I to ask these amazing women that we've respected in the field for so long? But emails started coming in and people started saying yes, which was really humbling and amazing. And we were shooting for at least 100 because of the 100th anniversary. And we ended up ultimately, between Frances and I and the rest of the women, 106. Yeah.
So did you have people contacting you outside of that network of emails, being like, I've heard about this project, I want to be part of it?
Not so much. I mean, I think what we did end up running into was people who, for whatever reason, couldn't participate, either because they had other big projects they were doing and they couldn't pull themselves away, or they were like, you know, this is not really my thing. I can't really see myself making work about this, or I don't really want to celebrate, you know, the 100th anniversary because I don't feel like it's an anniversary for me, but I'm really excited about the project. I can't wait to see what you do. So we did get some no's for sure, and completely respect any woman's choice to obviously participate or not participate in anything. But yeah.
So what were the parameters? Like, what did you ask? Did you have a specific curatorial vision when you were looking for work? Or was it up to the artist to really create something specific?
We left it very much up to the artists. I think the way we worded it was, you know, respond, react, or reflect on. So it left it very open-ended, and I think that open-endedness left some time for different projects like research-based. You know, Lisa McCarty talking about it last night, of kind of diving into statistics at that time, and others reflecting on their experience as a woman and as a mother or an activist. So yeah, the way it was worded, I think people had some flexibility. And Odette England's book was mentioned last night, Keeper of the Hearth, which responded to Roland Barthes, you know, the picture of his mother in the winter garden. So there were definitely a lot of questions, and to be able to use that as kind of a reference felt good too, to be like, you know, it could have all these different voices, but ultimately it will come together under this one umbrella. And on the website, that was always the original format that it was going to exist in.
So how did it come together? How did you make your final choices?
Well, we had said that in the beginning that we didn't really want to be, you know, gatekeepers / curators, really. We wanted anybody who had something to say, and however it showed up to us in terms of an image, that all of those iterations of their voice would be included. So all of the images that women submitted are housed on the website, and each woman has their own dedicated page and their images and their bios and links to their websites and, you know, pictures of them, which is really amazing to see because it's varied voices, people from all over the country, of all different ages, stages in their careers, which of course we would want in terms of this conversation. And so yeah, it was amazing. And when we launched, it was on the day of the ratification, August 20, 1920. And we took Instagram by storm. We, you know, sort of last minute, honestly, I was like, every woman should post one of their images and support the, you know, show or the virtual website at the same time. And we were getting emails and texts from people who were like, what is this project? Because it was literally, it was everywhere. I mean, it's great marketing, 106 people posting at the same, the same time. And, you know, we also had this really wonderful logo that was created by a woman named Mary Catherine, who's in Austin. And that really has been the emblem. It's 2 roses. It's kind of the history of the War of Roses. But yeah, so that's how it launched. And it's been really amazing ever since, honestly. Nothing we could have imagined to get to this point 6 years later.
And it was COVID times when this launched, right? So it was originally intended just to be an online exhibition or an online gathering space for all of these artists to talk. How did it move from online to the walls?
We always wanted it to be an entity, but we hoped it would be a show and a book at some point. So during COVID, I think the first show was the University of New Mexico. One of the artists, Megan Jacobs, arranged to print a selection of them and hung them in this kind of salon-style wall in their space. And we did a talk with their students when everything was in this virtual zone. So it was kind of a cool way to start, even despite not being able to be in the room together. And then the next show, actually, the first set of 40-something prints were made by Colorado Photographic Arts Center. And their printer got those prints donated. So that first show was hung with magnets in Colorado. And then those prints came to BU and they framed that first set. So that's about half of what's on view now, and we've since printed out the rest. But it really was people being excited and wanting to host it in some way. And also during COVID, there was a lot of projections that folks did at different universities throughout the states and on these campuses that maybe a lot of people were not actually frequenting, but if they had to go there, they could see it on a screen and keep that, social distancing and all of that good stuff at the time. And then the book, you could talk a little bit maybe about Texas women's relationship with Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Because that conversation probably first started in 2021.
Yeah, I was applying for a grant actually to help get one of our graduate students to help us with the website because it hadn't been built yet. So it was actually 2020.
Okay, wow.
And it was before even the launch. And I was like trying to get this grant to have somebody help us build the website. We ended up hiring Mary Catherine and her team, but later, after we got denied for that grant, the head of research came back and said, you know what, I'm on this book proposal committee. You should definitely think about applying. And I was like, oh, a book. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So we got all of our materials together. And the way that committee works is they have an understanding with Texas A&M. So if they like our proposal at TW, they send it on to Texas A&M. We have to go through the peer review process. And then if that passes there, then we get a book. And we were like, well, how much money are we going to have to pay for this? And they said, no, we're going to pay for it, which is
amazing,
unheard of in the photo world.
Exactly.
So our jaws dropped and we were like, oh my gosh, and you want us. You're going to pay for it and you want us. So that's how the book came about. And then we just really started thinking about how do we want to contextualize the work. And we started asking all these different people to do introduction, which is done by Lisa Volpe at the MFAH, and Sharon Perrick, who's at the Smithsonian, who wrote a really amazing article back during the launch of the website for NPR Picture Story. And so she wrote another article for us, and we have a couple other articles in there that really just really hold all of the work in a very different way. So it's a special object, and piece of history that's very different than the exhibitions.
So talk a little bit about your viewers, and for people that are coming to the exhibition, what are your hopes for them, and what do you expect them to walk away with, or how do you want them to respond to this extraordinary body of work?
I really think there's something for everyone in there, right? Not everything's for everyone, but there's something for everyone in there. And at a time that there's such polarization within our country and our communities, this is a show where you can walk in and relate to something directly. And it doesn't necessarily reflect red or blue or any thoughts like that, but there's something to hold on to and really think about. We talk a lot about how far we've come and how far we still have to go. And there's images of, I think the range of ages represented too really allows for a greater audience to find something to respond to. Like Yvette Meltzer's piece, I feel like gets a lot of attention of that sanitary belt holder, where it's in this shape on this red background, and it's so powerful. But there's this mystery to it too, right? With, audiences of a certain age can recognize this object.
Much younger generation's not going to understand what those are.
No, and they're shook when they learn what it is. And it's so fun to present in a lot of academic and university spaces too, where the students are so curious. And I have had family when it was on view in South Carolina that we are on different ends of the political spectrum, but we were all together in that room chit-chatting about all of the images. And the power of reading images versus reading a post or a comment or something, it's a different way your brain reacts and makes space for different types of conversations.
There's an immediacy to photography. There's an access to photography that is not like painting or sculpture or text, because when people read things, they bring while we all bring everything to it, text can be read really incorrectly, right? Those all caps, you think you're screaming, and there's a whole new way of seeing words now. Whereas with photographs, everyone can have an access point. And I think one of the beautiful things about this exhibition is that every single image has some type of access point for anyone to be able to look at and find their way through the image, find something relational, something that they can walk away with, whether it's to grow a little bit or to be angry a little bit or to find a way to protest a little bit. But everyone gets to bring something with them and leave with something else, I think, in addition.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, we've always said, I mean, for sure, and now particularly, but even since the beginning, that this project has been a way of like connecting people, but also it's a force, and it feels like activism, in a wonderful way, because I think photography, like you were mentioning, is so accessible. I mean, people are so literate in terms of images, and they read them every day, all day on their phones. And
well, I was going to say billions are uploaded every single day.
Yeah, and I think that's what we all have in common is our visual literacy in terms of photography, and it's something we can understand and we can share and we can have conversations about, and it's much easier to, I think, engage people with hard content of things that are happening in the world through that versus something that's written or something that, even sometimes those conversations that come up and they seem very abstract and big and large and scary, but you have this thing that you can hold on to, or this photograph that you can talk about and find these points of connection either to history or to like the present moment. And yeah, it's been an amazing thing. And I just, we're so proud of this show.
So thinking about non-traditional photographers or women that want to document this moment, what would be your advice to how they can capture this moment, how they can have a voice uploaded among those 74 billion photographs? They may not be on the walls of the Griffin, but they might be on social media. They might find a friend group or something that they can post their voice. What would be your advice to them?
Oh my gosh, just that their voice is needed and there's space for that. There's always room for another unique perspective, and no human is the same on the planet, which makes every single picture out there completely unique and welcome. There's a space for it, and there's a community that wants you and needs your images and needs you to share that. And as an educator, like that's what I do with my students, but even if it wasn't my students, anybody out in the world, that there's so much value in each human and also the things that they can create and share. Yeah.
I was going to say too, of like making pictures about what you really care about, what you really want to talk about and explore, because sometimes the more personal something is, like the more universal it actually becomes, when you could really relate so deeply with someone who's willing to bear that maybe hard side or deep side, something they're healing. It can really change someone's life if you're willing to share the pictures you make.
Which brings me to your collaboration. It's here on the walls at WinCAM. Can you talk a little bit about, after this massive endeavor of Yellow Rose Project, what was it like for the two of you as artists and not as curators necessarily to work with each other to create this beautiful exhibition?
Well, first of all, I have to just say thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, when it was offered, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, this is such a treat, and they want our stuff on the walls. I mean, anytime anybody gives you space to share your imagery, it's such a thing that's humbling and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But how did that start? It's kind of like, what are we going to show? And I've been working on a project that has, a rabbit hole through research on Anna Atkins, and flew to England to study all her books and then work with her herbarium at the Natural History Museum, and then go back to where Anna was.
That had to have been a magical process.
Yeah, amazing.
Right? The best research trip ever.
Yeah, and going back to her hometown in Halstead where she made her algae prints and British and foreign ferns, and just being in that space with the same light and air and making cyanotypes and learning about her history and
the sunniest weeks.
It's this, yeah, it was like this, they said it was the sunniest 2 weeks in history since 1910.
Amazing.
That I was there. I was just like, oh my gosh. I felt like she was coming down from the heavens. But yeah, so I have been entrenched in this amazing, one of the first female photographers, a person who made the largest body of sustained work before any other male at the time, and who made the first photographic book. I was like, this is the work that I want to share. And it just so happened that Frances also has this really amazing project that she's literally been working on for 20 years? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a fun opportunity because you were so jazzed to show this new work, and the opportunity to frame it and present it for the first time was so energizing. And then I have this series of self-portraits I started in high school that's evolved over time. So it was fun to go through and find the works that were made outside and in relationship and conversation with nature in a way to kind of pair up with Meg's. And, we made some selections beforehand, but it was until we got in the space where we were like, oh, and finding these little pockets of light that showed up in each other's works, and they were just obvious connections that we didn't even make before.
And you did this long distance, right?
Yeah.
So you're showing each other things on a screen or just talking conceptually, and all of a sudden it arrives here and it's magic.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
It does feel like magic, and
Yeah.
it feels like, chemistry and history and all of these overlapping. I think you really feel a love for photography between both of our images too, both kind of entrenched in the history of photography and interest in makers before us and contemporaries that put it in this place where it's it's just loaded with magic and chemistry and all the senses of the word, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So for those that don't know the process, can you just give us a little brief rundown
Yes.
on what a cyanotype is or how permanent it is, very different from today's run it out of a printer type photograph?
Yeah, it's so special. It is a mid 1800 process created by Sir John Herschel in 1842. And it's where you mix potassium ferrocyanide and ferroammonium citrate in equal parts, and you paint it onto a piece of watercolor paper. It dries, and you can stick objects or a negative or digital negative on top of that, or just flora you find out in the world, like what Anna did. Mm-hmm. And you stick it out in the sun, and because of that chemical reaction, once you wash it in water, it turns blue. And it's an amazing, anytime anybody goes in the darkroom or does a lumen print or anything where you can actually see that chemical reaction or something change before your eyes, like you said, it is total magic. So, and it's also, it's very fluid, and it's about painting, and it's about and it's very addictive. I'm not gonna lie. You're like, ooh, that happened. Let me do it again. Oh, let me do it again. Let's see what this is. And it's very much this process between the actual chemicals and the objects and intuition and just play, and it's a delightful process.
So for someone without access to chemicals, is there something like the sunprint kit that you can find at a museum that essentially is the same thing or similar?
Yeah.
So that you get that same sort of reaction?
Yeah, I think Jacquard and the sunprint kit, Jacquard, you can get that on Amazon. They have even pre-treated pieces of fabric and paper. They have little chemicals that the powder's already in the bottles, and then you can just put the water in it.
Great.
So you can just get those
So
off
it's
of Amazon.
easily accessible now.
Yes, and it's relatively non-toxic, and you don't have to dispose of the chemicals after you wash things away in a particular way, and anybody can do it. Like, I've done it with my 9-year-old son, and he was like, wow, let's do that again.
Pokemon, put them on there.
I know, yeah, it would be so interesting to do Pokemon with that. But yeah, anybody can do it. And that, I think that's one of the charming things about it, because so many other types of processes in photography are a lot more difficult. But cyanotype is something for everyone.
And Frances, your work is all black and white. What was the choice there? Why not move to color? Did you feel that the project was specifically black and white in idea?
I feel like my brain kind of operates in black and white most of the time when I think about my own images that I create. But I had, that experience in high school that got me into photography in the darkroom, and there was a picture of my brother's white Jeep going through a big mud splash. And seeing that develop, it was that sort of magic, but that contrast too. So when I photograph, I think about it sort of more in shape and light than I do ever in color. And the output, I haven't been back in the darkroom, but like working on this, it was like, oh yeah, I want to get back into that like actual silver space, because those prints are dying to be silver. And currently they're digital prints made by the guy at Pitch Black Editions. Does a wonderful job. But yeah, that sort of, that connection to the geometry, I think, is always interesting to me in black and white, and it allows my brain to not get distracted too much by color in my own works.
So do you have an image that you really resonate with, or is there a pair that you've created out there in the gallery that really sort of identifies this whole project as one piece?
There's a couple of pairs that I was just stunned by, but there's one that right when you walk into the space, it's a cyanotype of mine of what looks to be like the silhouette of a woman kneeling in front of this sort of geometric shape that has one of Anna's specimens in it, and then it's a picture of Frances's, which I just love, and it's got her hand is, it's larger in the frame because it's closer to the photograph, and it's like pressing on this beautiful grass, and in the distance you can see this shape, which is of a house. And so there's like this relationship between, shapes, and like, what is this house metaphorically? Is this house representation of in her image? And then like the body in mine kind of looks like a hand, but it's like this conversation between the two, which I think is like really interesting. Body's relationship to home and to the environment, and kind of like a honoring of that nature, like this touching of the ground and kneeling towards a specimen, a piece of flora. I love that pair.
Yeah.
So.
They both kind of feel like altars in a way, and represent this, relationship with nature, and also our own mortality in both of those images, I think, is my kind of takeaway from that. And yeah, it was so fun to brainstorm about the topics that show up in our work. I wish we recorded that Zoom session where we're just like, oh, this, and this.
Yeah.
And there's so many levels. I think especially as women too, exploring our relationship to the world, with ourselves, and fertility, and all of those kind of wild questions that I think are really evident in both of our works, in terms of like output of life and creative output into the world. It felt like this was an opportunity to really celebrate that. So thank you again for asking us to collaborate. Because at first I was like, no. I was like, we shouldn't do that.
No,
and then
she literally said, I think we should give this space to somebody else so that they can, and I was like, or we could talk about like us doing something. It's okay, And then she was like, okay, let's do it. I think I talked you into it. Yeah, for sure. Because, as a person that has spent your life, almost 20 years, like just supporting other artists and giving them the wall space and promoting them and championing them. It was nice to be able to sort of talk you into like, no, maybe you should do that for yourself, you know? And
well, not to mention their self-portraits.
yeah.
So, you know, for me, self-portraits are just an impossible idea. I'm not a selfie person. I don't take photographs of myself. I don't go out and, you know, I'm not on Facebook. So how do you find I mean, it's almost like taking back your own power, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for people that want to create self-portraits that are more in a fine art vein versus a selfie vein, how do you what advice would you give for access to someone to be able to start making those photos?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think it's evolved to like some of the first pictures I ever made were very like face centric, and now they continue to be more abstract over the years. And you don't see my face in any of these, right? It's not just like, oh, that's Frances. You know, it's a really different kind of relationship to how we think about a selfie or a self-portrait. But you know, kind of in a way like how you explore still lives, like thinking about objects or spaces that you respond to. And actually this conversation came up a lot planning this, where I rarely make photographs of myself in my own home. So every time I travel or I book a hotel or an Airbnb, I'm like, all right, what kind of window light do they have? And I'm like looking at all the pictures and thinking about it that way. But yeah, incorporating kind of back to like the objects you care about, spaces you care about, and like make a self-portrait of your fingertip to start. Like it doesn't have to be face on, you know, full body, where I have such an issue with self-consciousness too. And then to make self-portraits feels like that a combat to that. But yeah, get playful, and it doesn't have to be so obviously you.
And that's one thing I was thinking about with Yellow Rose Project as well, is one would anticipate that they're all portraits, right? Because it's a project about women, for women, and portraiture is not even a quarter of the show, I think. There's a lot of varied images. How do you want men to respond to not only your work here at WinCAM, but to the Yellow Rose Project?
I mean, so my father had the privilege to visit the show at Texas Women's when we had it there a little bit ago. And, you know, he had so many things to say about it, but one of them was like, it's an education I'm learning, and it's moving to be in that space, to be around all of those voices. And I think that's like the biggest takeaway, you know, because nobody can really, like, you can talk, you can write, whatever, like in terms of all kinds of stuff, in terms of your experience. But I think a photograph can get to something that is a little bit deeper and can touch somebody, as we've talked about, in a very different way. And that's incredibly impactful. And so I think for men, that is like the biggest win, is somebody to come into a space and walk away being just moved, because that is not their experience in this world. And each of those experiences is very different, and how that shows up. But as a whole, that is, I mean, that's just, to me, it is quite moving. And it affects people who also are women and young girls. We've had people come to the show that have cried because of the history. They've been older women, younger women, or they'll talk about things inside the images. So yeah, but no, it's a powerful thing when you have that many voices together.
So where do you both go from here?
I mean, our
What's the
plan,
next collaboration?
Well, we want to get that book out. So
Yeah.
we've got a fun year of getting that book out for sure.
Yeah, and then also just touring the show. Again, we feel, so it's been 6 years, you know, and we cannot believe we're in this place right now, where we're having this beautiful show at your museum. And We just wanted to keep touring, and we want to keep sharing all of these visions with people and having those conversations, especially right now. It's a particular moment in history, and I think the work is really needed. I think the book is really needed too. So for a while, we're gonna really focus on this. Yeah. So that, I mean, this is still our charge, you know. Yeah.
But I do feel energized to, you know, putting our show together, and it's like kind of recognizing that artist side feels good.
Oh yeah.
Again, and being in, you know, we have been working on this for so long, and in so many of those years has been in like editing stage, right? With the book and the edit and production and all of the logistics and stuff. So now it feels so good to be like, here's the thing, come to the show, and we have this like package to present and make accessible. I think like the reach of not only the show to have people immersed in that space, and I loved being in there listening to like people talk about, you know, amongst themselves, not necessarily to me, but to hear what comes up. But yeah, just to like celebrate that we're in this kind of promotional space now and just have the ability to share it.
It's very different to be a curator versus being an artist, right? Because oftentimes as an artist, you're not really looking at your work as critically as you would if you were a curator.
Right.
How do you balance those two things while you're looking at your own work?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't had much of a curatorial role, honestly, up until this project. So it's been a completely different experience for me. And really, what's interesting about it, and maybe different than curation in some other ways, is there's a kind of like picking out, like a cherry picking of imagery and elevating these and not the other ones in some way. But I feel like we're elevating all of it, all of the effort, all of the work. And that's been really amazing. In terms of my own work, I feel I'm actually more critical on myself than I am on other people.
Yeah.
But it also, I think what I take away from this experience of wanting to elevate everything for all of these women is I need to be softer and kinder to myself and to my own work, and give it another chance, because, you know, we can be very hard on ourselves as women, but also as artists. And so I know you've had kind of a similar experience with your work. Yeah.
Yeah, even just, I went to the portfolio reviews in Chicago on the other side of the table for the first time this year. So as a vulnerable artist, and it was kind of amazing, and took a few to be like, okay, I'm on this side, I'm looking at everything upside down. It's a completely different experience. And trying to give myself my own advice there too, where I was like, one person might like this and the next person won't, and like, that's okay, and it doesn't mean you're failing, and all of these things. But I think there is, this like self-criticism that is a daily struggle. And in the curatorial space, I think it's so much about kind of just like making these new narratives that, you know, it all kind of comes back to this personal reflection too, of like any juried show you look at. Like, I did a juried show, I had to do the selections like 3 weeks after my 20-year-old cat passed away one time, and that show, you could feel it, you know. And it was so funny, where I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, that's the Jeffrey show, but you could feel like the sadness and the grief. And like, we're human, right? So that curatorial human element, I think, is actually really fascinating. And how we bring that to the images we make is kind of cool. Like with my photographs, it's like, oh yeah, that's when I was handling some Bill Brandt material, and like my Annie Brigman year, where I was like obsessed with that book that came out. So it's kind of funny how the curatorial role feeds the information that drives picture making.
As artists, how do you work around when you have a mental block or you get stuck? Is there a moment that you take a deep breath and wait, or do you go out into the universe and just photograph more?
For me, I one of my undergraduate degrees is in writing, and so I write. I have writing prompts. I give myself 10-minute little writing exercises. I do it with my students to just sort of dig deep, but also like get out the stuff so that you can get to something else. And but then also, get outside, go for a walk, like make yourself something delightful to eat. It's okay. Like sometimes, we have this idea of the artist as like this person that locks themselves away, and then they're just like pushing to get to the next thing. And I find, it's so important to just be like, oh, like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of resistance from my own creative energy, and how do I fill myself up so that I can come back? And it is taking a break. It is taking a breath, and maybe that breath lasts for a couple of days. But it's like trying to find those things that fill you up in a different way, which also changes the way you make art, changes the thing you have to say. So that there's a little more of like a flow to it, but for sure. That's my advice, right?
There were like full years I didn't make any pictures, or I tend to want to photograph like when something is really shaking up my life. So a lot of them are made in like times where I'm like, I don't know what else to do except to make a picture. So sometimes when I feel like I struggle when I'm like happy to make pictures, but I've been making pottery instead. So like switching mediums real quick, or I was making linocut prints for a couple years just to switch up.
To change the neural pathways in which you want to create.
Yeah, and photography sometimes, all processes are fun, but it can be so exacting and clean that sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I need to be covered in mud. I need to be scraping into something and feeling that different tactile relationship.
So at this point, the best way to experience that creativity and get excited is to go to this exhibition, Yellow Rose and Perennial Impressions, and find something new, find something that we haven't thought about, that we haven't seen, that we haven't looked at for a while. I know I'm older than both of you, so a lot of these meanings of some of these works have very different meaning for me than they would for you, but I think this is a series of exhibitions that everyone can find something to be inspired by or creative with. So I want to thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank
oh my
you
gosh,
so
such
much.
a pleasure. Oh my goodness.
It's
just
a milestone for careers and for the project, for sure.
highlight for sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.